Hello and welcome to Monday Mug Mentions, week number 27. We are 27 weeks into this segment where over the course of a cup of coffee, we talk about things that are interesting in the tabletop industry. So thank you all for joining me. It's a lot of fun to get to chat and see you all each week. I see some familiar faces and some new faces popping in, and it's really, really cool to see that this afternoon. Some hellos. Hello, Derek. First comment. Yeah, he says. That's right. And Brad says, hi. Oh, Derek. Brad usually looks forward to that first comment. You guys are going to have to battle it out each week. Good to see you both. Ian, Courtney, my marvelous wife, good to see you. Chad, Herb, Mom, good to see you. Daniel, afternoon. Yuri, hello, everyone. Martin, good to see you. Thank you for joining. That's Martin from Board Game Exposure. And Derek from Board Game Spotlight. We've got the board game guru, titans of industry over here joining us this afternoon. This is awesome. Thank you for being here, guys. So this week, what am I drinking? Let's get into it. I am having a cup of HEB Cafe au Lait Texas Pecan. I don't generally love flavored coffees, but this, I'll be honest, is sort of transporting me back to San Antonio, my hometown where I lived for 30 years. HEB is the grocery store that I loved to go to. I don't have that available to me anymore. This was another part of the massive care package sent to me by the Toth family. Andrew Toth, my partner in Yanaguana Games, Becky and Cooper, his family as well. And my love to y'all. Hello to all of you. And we also have to pour just a little bit out, although I'm not going to. I'll take a sip. We lost a Monday mug comrade. The mug that I used this last week, that was the very awesome Disney mug, it shattered. It got broken. Things happen, mistakes happen, but it got broken. So we've lost our first mug of the show, and I'll take a sip to that. In remembrance of that poor guy or gal. That cup is no longer with us. I'm sorry, Andrew got that cup for me. I've already sent him a text and apologized and asked him, please, next time he goes to Disney, to get me one. So I see in the comments we've got some feud action going between Yuri and Martin and Derek. Everyone calm down. It's okay. There's enough coffee to go around for everybody. Bill Lassick says, finally made one of these lives. So good to see you, Bill. Thank you for being here. Let's see here. Let's move on into the games because I want to get into everything this week. We got some cool stuff to talk about. We got a website that I really think is awesome and some other stuff. So, let's see here. Oh, Courtney says, no, why mention the cup breaking? Anytime we lose one of our mug mentioned comrades here, we're gonna remember them. No worries, there is no fault assigned. Anyway, let's see here. I think it's time to move into trying to decide whether to do the board game or the video game first this week. And I think we're going to do the board game, and then we'll move into the video game. Derek says, it's so nice to be on this side of the video live stream. Yeah, I tend to do similar things to what they're doing right now to them in their live stream. So this is turnabout and fair play and all those sorts of things. Also, the bottom of my beers drive me nuts. It feels like it's trying to run away. So I'm trying to contain it and keep it tame back in there. It's been one of those days. I had a rough night. The last 2 nights I have felt very, very unwell. I'm feeling better, and I'm back to my old coffee drinking self. But, yeah, that's why we had a little bit of late start today. It's been a rough couple days. I have not felt 100%, even though we've been trucking along on work. I have an awesome record announcement to make at the end of the stream or close to the end of the stream, too. So stick around for that. But let's get off the coffee, and let's move on to the game I want to talk about this week. And that is Thundergriff Games, Dead Man's Doubloons. And let's get our handy-dandy screen up right over here. I really, really love our fancy screen. Bam, there we go. So Dead Man's Doubloons, if you have not played it, is a very, very interesting game. Designed by a friend of mine named Jason Maselli. Very talented designer and the owner of a couple of sort of game publishing and game publishing outlets, and one sort of like think tank of game maker creators. So, as Brad says, I think I've heard of this game. Brad was one of the people who I think was teaching the game before the Kickstarter was out. Brad knows his stuff. And it was published by my friend Gonzalo. That's correct, with Thundergriff Games. And I'm going to put up some photos so you can see the box and different stuff. But what is the most compelling thing to me about Dead Man's Doubloons, and I've talked about this before, is that the way it deals with the death of your ship and the death of your player. And that's what this week's sort of mechanism, or the thing we're talking about this week, is how these certain games deal with death in certain ways. I actually tried to deal with death in my very first game of players in a way that it maybe worked, but it made the game go on too long. And so I'm always interested to see in ways that games deal with death. Death not necessarily even meaning player elimination, because that's not what we're talking about here. But we're just talking about the death of a character or something like that, and just death in general as a subject. So in Dead Man's Doubloons, when your ship is blown up and you die, you become a ghost ship. It's a pretty easy way to deal with death. You become a ghost. I like that. It's a really fun way as well, but the way it is done is very clever. Not only do you just become it's not like you just become a ghost ship where you're like a weaker version. You're a completely different version of the ship that has different ways you can affect the game and affect other players. And I really enjoy that the death mechanism, while it's something you generally want to avoid, if you get killed, you get this cool little ghost ship that's a transparent version of your color ship, and you can kind of see that here on the image. I'm going to put another image up, and you can kind of see a fuller array of what the game looks like. But yeah, so you can continue on playing the game as this ghost ship, and actually even redeem yourself back to becoming alive again, which I really, really think is a fantastic mechanism and a way to deal with death. Is that you become a ghost and you have a way to come back from that. I think those are really, really fun ways to play with that, and it doesn't really make you feel bad when you die. It makes you feel like there's a new adventure, and I think that that's an important thing when you're dealing with death. Is that it's generally a negative connotation. So if we can, if you even think about it in the whole mythos of thinking about it in life and all that sort of stuff, like death is generally something people try to avoid and think of as a negative thing. So when you can bring it sort of into a positive way, or not even positive, but an interesting adventure, which I think that's a much better way to look at it in games, but maybe even in life too. That's it's sort of at every step of the way, I think we're very, very concentrated on what's happening right now. And if you look at the bigger picture, there's a lot more people who are dead than are alive. And so whatever that experience is, there's a lot more people experiencing that than there are what we're doing. So I always think it's interesting to explore that in games. And the way that Dead Man's Doubloons does it is it turns you into a ghost ship that changes your powers, changes your ship, changes the way things work. And it's incredibly fun. It's also incredibly fun to come back from the dead. And I would imagine it would be maybe in real life. I don't know. That's the zombie argument, right? That's we can talk about that another show. But let me catch up with some comments. Thank you for tagging Gonzalo and Jason. I appreciate that, Martin. Derek says, I love the word doubloon. Martin says, I love the word crumpets. Crumpets. I think I like crumpets. I think I just like to eat crumpets. I think they're tasty, if I remember. Tea and crumpets, is that correct, Martin? So Bill says, great game. Played it when it was on Tabletop Simulator. Yeah, it's still on Tabletop Simulator, I believe, and it's really, really fun. I love playing. I have my copy right back here. It's the collector's edition from the Kickstarter, the nice one with fancy coins and all that. It's a fantastic game. I really think it's well done. Zach says, Dead Panic turns the eliminated player against the group. And that's another thing. If you look at even, I'm trying to remember the game, a Posthuman that I got, that does the same thing. It turns you into a mutant when you die. So you don't die, you become a mutant. You mutate. I think a lot of zombie games do this as well, and that's interesting. Although just turning everybody who dies into a zombie is less compelling to me than becoming a ghost ship with its own separate powers. For whatever reason, I really, really enjoy that. I think it's a clever mechanism. It's the hook of the game, in my opinion, and it's one of the best ways you can get somebody to play Dead Man's Doubloons. They said, you have the option of when you die, you become a ghost ship, and they're like, yeah, let's play that. It also plays up to 6, which I really like. I also really, really, really like the the way that the board works is like it's so easy for it's not an area control really, but the way you shoot other players and the way you use your abilities is sort of this quick, easy programming that is really intricate. You can think through your turn, or you can just like lay it down and say, let's see what happens. And both things have a certain value. I think a strategy is definitely better, but you have fun either way. Just seeing, oh, I shot your ship, or oh, this happened. I will say that Pollyanna the parrot is the best character. If you have the chance to play and you're not playing with me, you can play as Pollyanna. It's a fantastic game. You should definitely check out Dead Man's Doubloons, and it's a lot of fun. It deals with death in an interesting way. I thought it was one of the more compelling things that we could bring up about that subject in terms of a tabletop. But you guys have some great great examples that you've given in the comments as well. So. Let's see here. Brad tagged Rob for Pollyanna, and I agree with that. Rob is a huge fan of Pollyanna as well. So, Yuri says, you should send it to me. It's my wedding anniversary today. Well, happy wedding anniversary, Yuri. For your anniversary, I'm going to give you a cool update on Record. That's what I'll do. That's the best I can do on the day. I wasn't prepared for this. I didn't know. So, hello, Gonzalo. So good to see you. And there's Rob. Polly. Yeah, exactly. That's it. Yeah. Bill says agreed, whereas in Posthuman you still play as a mutant, but you're very limited, where in Dead Man's Doubloons you really get a full, rich afterlife experience. That is a huge part of what I'm speaking to, is that when you turn into a ghost ship, you don't go, oh, man, I get to do like this one thing on my turn. You go, oh, I get to do what now? Awesome. And I'm really going to mess with you guys as a ghost ship and even make my way back into the game and potentially win. It's such a cool experience to become a ghost ship in Dead Man's Doubloons. It almost, I don't want to say it encourages you to die, but it encourages you to battle, which is great, because it's like, I don't care if I die. I get to become this cool, transparent green ghost ship. I try to always play green, but I do like Pollyanna a lot. It's a really clever way to deal with that, and I like that way that Bill put that, is the difference between Posthuman, where you play as a mutant but you really don't get to do a ton, whereas in Dead Man's Doubloons, when you die, you still have almost as much, maybe more agency than you had when you were alive, and I think that's really, really fun. So it's a lot of fun, and Gonzalo says that's the spirit, my friend. Yeah, I think that's your pirates you're battling, right? Your Dead Man's Doubloons. It's the last person. It fits the theme. The mechanism works with the theme. It's one of those things that's really, really elegant and works together. I think Derek says, sounds like I should talk to Gonzalo about covering Dead Man's Doubloons on the Spotlight. Absolutely. Again, this is a fantastic game. It also has a great player scale. From 2 to 6 players, and that's just incredible. It's fun and fast even at 6. You're not like bogged down with it. You really aren't. I enjoy it. I like it with more players. I think the more the better. It's a lot of people shooting back and forth and all that kind of stuff. It's a lot of fun. Thundergriff puts out great stuff. If you haven't seen their stuff, even like Tao Long is one of my favorite 2-player games. So they do great stuff. But in terms of dealing with death, this is probably one of the better games that deals with it on the larger scale. When you think about like all the different games, there's another I want to talk about that I'll mention is like Blood Rage. I like the way that Blood Rage deals with death being a positive thing potentially with the way that Valhalla works, and that's the same thing here. Is that you've got a positive that comes from the death, which is your ghost ship and more powers. Gil says you don't become an NPC. Exactly, you don't become a non-player character. You're still involved, and I really, really like that. I think it's fantastic. So that is probably one of the best ways that you can think about removing player elimination from your games is finding a good way to deal with death. Personally, my first game, I tried to just keep everybody in by sort of keeping them afloat. It was called Shipload of Gold. It was a very short print run game, but essentially it played up to 8 people, and you're passing coins in a left, center, right way with sort of some piratey actions. And what ended up happening is the game could end in 10 or 15 minutes, but it was a potential for the game to go on for quite a long time. until we made a couple of auxiliary rules to take out certain cards. And when you're just trying to keep people in, that's not fun. Giving people agency when they're out of the game is a major difference than just keeping people sitting at the table. So that's definitely a huge distinguishing factor between player elimination with like a light way to keep people in versus turning someone into a whole new sort of ghost or giving them new abilities. And in this particular situation, I think a lot of you have hammered on it. Like, you don't turn into an NPC. It's Martin says, for me, some games when you're losing, you lose interest. In Dead Man's Doubloons, you actually get disappointed and then get revenge. It's exactly. You all, and I think Bill mentioned it as well, is that some games will just sort of turn you into that in Posthuman you're a mutant and you get to do very limited things. In Dead Man's Doubloons, you're doing a ton. I think that's, and it's an exciting thing to enter that next phase. So very, very well done. This is probably my favorite pirate game. I don't know if I have another pirate game that I enjoy more than this. So, if you haven't played it, make sure you play it. If you want to play it with me at Grand Con, I may take this with me to Grand Con in Michigan. That's another big announcement today. I will be at Grand Con. We are not there officially as Yanaguana Games. I am just going to play games and have some meetings and talk. If you're a designer who's going to Grand Con and you want to schedule some time, I have limited time, but I would be happy to sit down with you if you've got something that you want to show us. Send me an email and let's get that set up. Grand Rapids, Michigan. I will be headed that way in September. And then PAX Unplugged is not too far from now. So that's also coming up, and maybe I'll have a copy there. I'm sure that Thundergriff will have stuff there, and maybe they can teach it to me as well. So let me find my mouse and see what's going on here. There we go. Okay, and I will move on. So this is probably, again, one of my favorite pirate games. If you haven't played it, make sure you play it. I'm going to catch up on comments while moving on to our next game that's the digital side of this, and the game that I think that's dealing with it in an interesting way right now. So Gil says, unfortunately, some games you wish it had player elimination. It sucks when you're not eliminated, but when you're just sitting with no purpose in the game. Yeah, that's definitely, when you know you're going to lose for the last half hour or hour of the game, that can really stink as well. Bill says, absolutely. The trick is to make sure no one is never really out of the game. You're still a threat and can take the win, I think he was saying. So let's take a look here. So the digital game I want to talk about is called Graveyard Keeper by Tiny Build. And this is a really strange game that deals with death in a really weird way. So what Graveyard Keeper is somewhat like Stardew Valley, where you're just sort of managing an inventory and resources, technology trees, trying to learn how to do things better. You'll notice my avatar woke up, my little graveyard keeper, and he's trying to make some iron. He needs firewood to do that, so he's got to go and he's got to actually chop the firewood. He'll put that firewood into a furnace to make iron. Very regular things you need to do as a graveyard keeper, right? When it says graveyard keeper, it's a little bit deceiving. This is an entire life keeper. This person has to farm, has to make all sorts of materials, make all sorts of things, and then also keep up a graveyard. What you'll learn later is that it doesn't just keep up a graveyard, it's also a church and sorts of things. But I need carrots for my donkey to deliver more corpses to my graveyard. I don't have enough carrots, so you see I'm going to have to go buy some seeds from a vendor. I'm going to walk through his wheat field very rudely, purchase seeds, and even though he asked me not to walk through his wheat field, I'm going to walk right back through it and go plant some carrots. But that's going to take a long time, so I think I'll go and I'll show you that there's a body that's unhappy in my graveyard, so I deal with that as well. So what Graveyard Keeper does is it puts you in what is assumably the afterlife. The very first cutscene says that this character has been, I think it's hit by a car, dropped a cell phone, and you're sort of just end up being this graveyard keeper in this weird land. It's a strange way to deal with death. It's sort of talking about a weird afterlife. You'll see here I buy a bunch of carrot seeds. My character is going to walk back and plant those carrot seeds. It's a pretty pedestrian, sort of very, very relaxing game. But the graveyard keeper aspect does this weird sort of inventory management slash satisfaction management thing. I don't even know how to explain it. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it because I think you'd have to play the game to really understand what they're doing. But they're talking about death in a very interesting way, which is that you are for some reason dead, but also now keeping a graveyard full of potentially other undead or other dead people. It's hard to understand exactly where it's going with that. But you'll notice I sit and I plant my carrots. For the church, I'm going to need rope, and so the game requires me to plant hemp. And you'll see me plant hemp here. So this is a naughty little graveyard keeper. It's an interesting game in that it's got a whole lot going on, but the death portion is ever present. Everything you do is related to the fact that you just want to get back home to life. Like you want to become part of your normal life again. You want to go back to that. That's the entire goal, seemingly, of your character, is to become what you were before, which is just going to meet your love of your life for dinner or whatever the case may be. So essentially, that's the way it works on every level. Let me see here. Sorry. But you'll notice here there's a graveyard. And when I walk into the graveyard, there's going to be a series of happiness, sort of like markers there. And so I noticed that this person is unhappy, so I'm going to go and request exhumation permission from the church to take this body out of the ground, and I'm going to remove it. So I have to remove the headstone and all that sort of stuff first, remove the body. What I do with it, I'm not exactly proud of, but we usually will check it for parts in the mortuary to see if we need any of the things. So you'll see I've dug up this body out of my own graveyard that I tend. I'm going to go check it in my mortuary and just see if there's any other parts that are needed to be taken out. And then what I do with it, well, you'll see. But it's dealing with death in a humorous way, but it's also sort of compounding death upon death. So it's like the afterlife is saying, like, okay, now you're just a graveyard keeper in this afterlife, potentially saying this just keeps going, right? Like you're just going to continue to live different lives, or maybe you're always trying to get back to your other one, like Quantum Leap. I don't know exactly what they're saying. Okay, so you'll see here I'm getting rid of this body. It's the middle of the night. Why not just throw it in the river? Not a very good graveyard keeper, but that's what you got to do to have a satisfied group of corpses. So again, it's a very strange game, but it's dealing with death in a humorous way. You'll notice I also have my own church. In the basement of the church, there's all sorts of it is religious. There's all sorts of different things I have to do in the church to make candles and increase the faith of the people who are around this graveyard. But they are all assumably also dead and trying to get back to their own regular life, or they don't know that they're dead. You can't really tell what's going on. At least I can't at this point. I haven't finished or played through the game. It seems pretty time consuming to be able to do that. But it is a strange and interesting game, and I thought it dealt with death in a really, really weird way, which is to put humor on it and to sort of remove the negative connotation and put you right in the aspect of dealing with death. And again, showing sort of an afterlife. Like the death is what's your death as the graveyard keeper is what starts the beginning of the game. So it's not treating death as the end. It's actually treating death as the beginning of this experience. And so that's another really, really weird way, but compelling to deal with death in games. So I think both of those games do it vastly differently, but it's something to be very aware of as a game developer. Is if you're going to deal with death in your game, you can do it in a lot of different ways. There's a game coming out that I'm really interested to get a hold of at some point in the near future called Holding On, the life of Billy Kerr, I believe. And it may be like the life and stories of Billy Kerr. I may not have the full name right, but it's by Michael Fox, and it's actually someone who's in the hospital dealing, and they're, from what I understand, they're in intensive care, or they're in the end of life care. And you're sort of learning about their story while also trying to keep them alive, if I understand correctly. I may not have that perfectly. I haven't played it, so that's why I haven't been able to talk about it much yet. But it's got a beautiful story to it, and it's dealing with death in a very real way. And so it puts you right there in the front seat dealing with death. And there's various different ways to deal with it in games, and I think all of these are great examples of ways you can sort of think about death in a way to create a game that's not going to bring on the negative connotation, or even, like I said, in Blood Rage, you're going to strive for death to go to Valhalla, and you get more points because you battled in glory and went to death. That's Gerald says, hey. Daniel says, Michael Fox. And Alan Roach, while we talk about death, says, I'm watching from my chemo chair in Cranston. I know that's a first. Alan, much love to you, and you're a bad for doing what you're doing and getting through all this shit. I don't cuss on the podcast very often, but Alan's going through something that I hate, that I also have family members going through, and I absolutely hate cancer, and I wish it never existed. I hope among hopes that you are feeling good today, even having to go through that junk. All of those games sound unique and really, really. I mean, they're very, very. It's just dealing with death in a game is something that can help you deal with it, maybe even in real life and stuff like that. It is one of the most difficult things to think about, and so if you can deal with it sort of internally by playing games, sometimes it can help you to cope with it in real life. That's certainly the case when it comes to certain aspects of, like, when you're doing things that that model your real life, you get a strong sense of what you might do in a situation. So I think that's one of the things that I think about the most in games is, like, how do we improve lives through doing this gaming and this game design thing. And I think that, like, holding on the life of Billy Kerr is one way that you can do that. I think nyctophobia is another way. Like I said, that's I talked about that last week. That's an improving on someone's life sort of thing. And I really think that those sorts of initiatives in gaming are going to become more common. I think everyone should essentially try and think a little bit more worldly and maybe find ways to make games do this, to evoke these sorts of emotions or help cope with certain things. I'm not saying every game should. I think that there's something awesome about saying dude with a group of people until you get the right dude and say sweet. Have a fun time. But at the same time, certain games can deal with this stuff in a different way, or in a fun way, or in a clever way, or in a really, really innovative, intriguing way that's going to, make you think about things internally. So it says, Daniel says, if you love Alan, our love even more Mammoth coming out from his company. GPI and Shifting Realms are doing Mammoth, and I cannot wait to see that game on the table. I've seen some pictures recently, and I want it. I want Mammoth so bad. It looks beautiful. The artwork, if you guys haven't seen the cover, go look up the artwork for Mammoth. It is beautiful. Mom says, gives games a completely different and important purpose, fun and enriching both. Yeah, exactly. I think that's something pretty important. Yuri says, I use games for counseling sessions, and that is amazing. Yuri, I believe you're a school counselor at the middle or high school level, if I remember correctly, and, like, yeah, that's incredible. I could, if I was able to have some of these experiences in high school, I think I might have had a better time throughout my later developmental, like college developmental years. If I had some of the ideas put in place that board games give me, like managerial and time management and resource allocation and these sort of things, if I had been playing these games regularly, I maybe, who knows, things might have been different. But I'm really, really happy that I get to do that now and work with them now. It's really fun. So Daniel says QD deals with that in an abstract way, like, wait, are we going to lose these cute creatures forever? Exactly. Chad says, can't wait for Mammoth. Yuri, high school, awesome. Yeah, that is, man, if you had to deal with me as a high schooler, we wouldn't be talking right now. You would have hated me. I was a terrible high schooler. So Alan says, I can't hear what you guys are saying, but thanks. I assume it's mostly positive. Mostly, Alan, mostly. That is, yeah. No, Mammoth looks amazing. I got to see Alan and chat a bit at BerryCon about what they have coming out, and it's so impressive. It's if you guys don't know, like GPI is, I think, partnered for Mammoth, and this is Shifting Realms. This is Craig Van Ness and Jeff Van Ness, the Van Ness brothers. Craig, famously was the creator, for the most part, largely responsible for HeroScape. So, I mean, if you don't understand that, that's like, he's making his own games now. It's incredible. I have one called Shifting Realms that I'm dying to get into. I just haven't been able to play a lot of games, but I really want to play it so much. So Alan says, now I need to watch this again later. That may be too much, Marshall, for one day. Yeah, break it up. Do it like Wednesday, Alan. That is too much of my face. I agree. That's I'm so glad to see that your sense of humor never fails. You are really an inspiration, dude. Alan Roach, just blindfold yourself so you only have to hear him, and it evens out the experience. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you very much. So let's get into the media that we want to talk about this week. And that is actually Meeples Like Us, their accessibility and reviews. So if you have never seen Meeples Like Us, it's an awesome website. I've been keeping it to myself for a little bit, but essentially, yeah, it's this amazing website where you're going to have a number of reviews, but also some breakdowns of accessibility. They call it an accessibility teardown. So they're going to take a game and tell you how easy it is for visibility, color blindness, cognitive overhead, all of those sorts of things for games. That's incredible. We need more sites like this. We need more content from this site. So I would like to see more people going to Meeples Like Us and even offering to work with them, especially they've got a call out for, I think, certain folks they're looking to work with on a sort of set of guidelines for this. So accessibility, if you don't know, means being able to make a game that everyone can play, even if maybe they have some sort of disability. And there's a wide gamut of disabilities. So, and there's a wide gamut of sometimes what the severity of those disabilities can be, even in all the different ones. So having a site that's dedicated to making sure that we can sort of, focus in on these things is huge. Again, this is Nyctophobia. I just talked about this. This was the entire idea of Nyctophobia, was making sure that, you could do something with, for a blind player. That idea is the same sort of stuff we need to be using more often. So everybody needs to be checking out Meeples Like Us. You need to take a look at it. You need to go see how they break those things down, and then it'll help you design games in a way that you're really paying attention to this sort of stuff. I mean, you're paying attention to, okay, colorblind, that's a real common one. As most of us really try to make sure there's symbols that differentiate what things are without colors. But cognitive overhead, are you thinking about that when you put your game together? How many people will be able to think this much? Are you thinking about visual aspects like text size being big enough for someone who's got old age or eye impairments? I mean, I wear glasses. Sometimes things are very hard for me to read. So all of these sorts of things are very important. And I think there's a bunch of comments here. Derek says, as a colorblind player, I'm thankful for companies making games easier for colorblind players. Brad says, I'll check them out now. And then Mom says, will there be markings on the boxes to indicate accessibility levels? That would be a great idea. That would be a really good thing if we could, essentially add in, this works for these different different situations you can play it. I think that would be really cool, and I think their guidelines they're trying to come up with are something along those lines. So, yeah, we should definitely spend more time thinking about that. I mean, cognitive overload is something that I've experienced in many games where, I'm I'm a seasoned game player, and sometimes I just go, geez, this is so many levels of stuff that I'm not really I'm just not doing it right now. And, that's something we really need to think about as designers, in that what is the point of overloading someone's brain? If it makes sense for the game, then that's great, but it doesn't always. And so that's something to be kind of, very, very aware of. So I do have to move on because we're getting close on time. Actually, we're past time. And so I want to talk about this marketing initiative. It's a real quick thing. But yeah, I've got to go pick up my Jeep. My Jeep was fixed by an amazing auto shop. If you are in Rhode Island and you need an auto shop, Casals is amazing. They are awesome. If you're in Rhode Island and you need a body shop for any reason, message me. I'll tell you where to go. This is the place to go. They got my stuff done in less than a week, and they are awesome. They are just a best service I've ever gotten in Rhode Island anywhere. So, the thing I want to talk about on marketing before I go this week is Z-Man Games Stone Age Anniversary Edition. Anniversary editions are a great way to bring back a whole lot of that sort of stuff. So I'm going to catch up on comments before going to Z-Man real fast. I know I'm trying to rush. I do have to run pretty soon. So Bill says, I ran into that challenge with Koi, had to go through a lot of changes until the action program was easy enough for just about anyone to grasp. That's a huge, huge thing to be able to do, is to go back and take things down a notch to show that off. Damien says, I can't play Sagrada without asking for help. Is that blue or purple? I totally understand, Damien. Alan says, I'm trying to explain to the nurses and the other patients what they're looking at. Explaining live streaming to a group of 7-year-olds is more complicated than you'd think. My mom is 70. Alan, I have to explain why people watch this. I understand it. I don't understand it completely, but I appreciate it. That's for sure. Bill says, as a player, I didn't see it, but in testing, it really opened my mind. Yeah, so accessibility is something we should all be paying more attention to. It's something I've got a huge initiative coming for on our next big announcement, but that I can't talk about yet. But Z-Man Games Stone Age Anniversary, this is a cool way to bring life back to something that's already, if you've got an evergreen game that's maybe plateauing or it's sold out of its, second reprint or third reprint, maybe fifth reprint. It's a way to sort of bring back life, but maybe even add some spice. And that's what they're doing with the Z-Man Games Stone Age Anniversary Edition. It adds a winter side of the board where you're playing in winter, and I think it makes it a little bit more difficult. But it's just Stone Age with another sort of winter side of the board. It comes out in Q4. If you're looking to get me a Christmas present this year, Z-Man Games Stone Age Anniversary Edition is the absolute best thing you could possibly get. I've been waiting to get Stone Age just because I've been thinking, they're doing these editions. I think they're going to come out with something fancy. I'm going to wait for that one, and this is it. They finally came out with it. So the marketing of that just alone got me to go ahead and get on board and get a game that's been out for years, that people enjoy, that's already an evergreen, and I can't wait to get it. But that marketing was just an ICV2 news pop-up today that said, hey, they're releasing this thing, and it's got me excited for it. And so anniversary editions are a great way to get people excited for one of your evergreen products, and you're just celebrating their birthday, and that's a great way to do that. So Daniel says live streams are the new reality shows, not to demean live streams. No, I mean, I agree. It's a glimpse into the life of a game publisher, game designer. That's kind of what this is you guys, we talk about what I do. So, yeah, sorry, you'll notice the baby seats back there. That's because we're getting ready to go pick up the car and put everything back in. So, Alan says, Caroline, Mom, I'm not explaining it to you later. You're on your own. I love you, Alan. Derek says exactly what Daniel said. This is only the beginning of how big live stream's going to be. Well, I hope it's bigger than my audience, because I love you all, but I know this is just a drop in the hat of the board game audience. There's so many people who love this hobby, and we can share that. But I think that if we have accessibility as a large part of it, we can share it even further, right? Like if more people can play, better. That's just a better thing. So again, Z-Man Games Stone Age Anniversary is a great initiative for marketing. It's a great way to bring one of your evergreen games back in. I have got to run. We've got to go pick up this vehicle, and I know traffic around here gets crazy soon, so I don't want to keep anyone any longer. Thank you all for joining me this week. This has been one of the best weeks. I have not had this much fun on a show in a while, and y'all are awesome. Y'all are awesome for being here. I really appreciate it. Chad says, hopefully the anniversary edition dice cup won't smell like bad. I'll put bad. You could read the, not that I have firsthand experience, but I can imagine. I didn't know that the dice cup smelled bad. That's funny. Y'all have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for stopping by. Bye-bye.